Hey, good morning. It's good to see y'all guys from Voices from the Dirt Road. I'm Sean. I'm here in Somerville, Georgia. Last night I had an opportunity to speak to some outstanding people, and so I'm here in the hotel room. And on top of that, I had to run out and get my gas station coffee. But what I will tell you is the lady at the gas station said it was great coffee, and it is. So I got to give her credit and thank her for having some coffee because the hotel room that I'm in it got a coffee maker over there, but it was no coffee. So it's all good. So with that, in the world of agriculture, we got a lot of things going on. We want to be able to cover it for you this morning. Make sure you clearly understand. We had some highlights that happened to our farmers out there, and we also got some crises that are on the horizon. But we'll get into that a little bit later. One of the things I always like to give y'all guys is kind of a little update on what's personally going on my farm, because my farm is just a cattle farm that we're trying to improve, trying to move into the next generation, trying to do all the right things with NRCS and others. And so I try to use it kind of as a motivational tool, but at the same time as also an educational point of view or just sharing information. So this week, obviously, this has been extremely cold. We've dealt with a bunch of ice and snow, you name it. We dealt with it, but we made it through like all the rest of the farmers. But in addition to that, I'm not even sure if I mentioned it last week, we were actually putting in cross fencing. And that cross fencing is to help us with our regenerative agriculture program that we actually putting on my farm. And that's O7 Farms. We raise cattle, like I said earlier. So now we have actually took three pastors, and now they have turned into six. Last week we finished up that project. Actually, this afternoon, NRCS is going to be coming to my house and doing an inspection. I know we're going to pass, and then after we finish that, we'll start another project. As y'all guys know, as a farmer, we work every day, and we also are always trying to improve our farm, and that's why input costs sometimes can really hurt you when you're trying to make improvements. So with that, let me just show a quick little video on some of the cross fencing. So if you don't know what it is, it'll give you a better idea.
As we continue to make improvements here on the farm, we just finished our cross fencing project, going from 3 pastures to 6. This is an example of that. Not sure if you're going to be able to see it, but when we get up to that water, we built a wooden frame around it. So that means when the cows are in this pasture over here on this side, let me get my finger so you can see it. On this side, they can get to the water. And then when they're on here, they can still get to the water. So all the pastures now went from 3 pastures of rotation. Now we're going to 6. There's another pasture behind the house. We're not going to split that one. So 6 pastures now. So next in spring, when the grass starts growing again, we can really get into our regenerative, rotating the cows. So we're making improvements a little at a time. Just got it done. Kind of cold out here, but glad we got it done.
So as you can see there, I'm happy that we actually got that done. When I talk about rotating the cows, one of the things I try to do on my farm is we're continuously moving them around. Where I was showing you that picture there was not in the video, but it is a path that goes through the woods and take them to the back side of our farm. And the next project we'll be working on, probably starting next week, is on the other side of the farm. We'll cut back through the woods on the other side, and that's how we'll bring those cows all the way around the entire farm. And pretty much from the time they start in pasture number 1 to the time they get to pasture number 7 is roughly about 60 to 90 days before they come back to the very first pasture. So that means the grass got plenty of time to grow. That means we helping the environment, and we also helping the habitat of the entire ecosystem on the farm. So put some science into it, trying to do all the right things. Best prices is just trying to show. And if you want to give me a call, you can always come out to the farm and we can go in some details. But what I also saw, one of the coolest things this week that I've never actually really seen, I got one calf that for whatever reason, he loves drinking milk from his mom, which is natural. But after he drinks milk over there, if you don't watch him, he'll sneak up to another cow while her calf is drinking, and he'll also steal some milk. So this is a funny little video just to show you this little guy. He's turned into an expert on stealing milk.
So our 13th calf again is stealing milk, this time from TT. So he's basically figured out he can just go and drink milk from everybody. And he's figured out how to do it when the other calf is drinking. He's up there too. He's a smart little rascal. Cows normally don't do that, but these are all heifers.
Well, it was shortly after that video got to the end there, TT figured out he was there and told him, hey, get away. But again, that's not something you normally see. It was pretty cool to see it. And I imagine when I get back on the farm this morning after this show, he'll probably be out there doing the same thing. But let's just get on into the show. This week, at least here in Georgia, at least in my part of Georgia and Southwest Georgia or Southern Georgia, we did receive our payment, and that payment is Emergency Livestock Relief Program, ELRP, and that money came to us was from the flood and disasters, flood and drought disasters that happened in 2024. That money, that payment finally came in this week. We had to fill out some paperwork a few months ago, and I think it was either Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, it hit our bank accounts. A lot of farmers were excited that we received the money because guys still need to do some improvements on their farm from some things that happened way back in that particular time. So we was glad to finally receive it. I do know the farmers that are waiting on some money from soybeans and corn and all those kind of things that we talked about earlier in some past episodes. They are still waiting, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show. But I think at this particular moment, that money has not came in. But like I said, this afternoon, NRCS and USDA is coming to visit my farm. So I'll actually ask them that question. When do they think it's coming? I'm not receiving it. I don't, like I said, I don't do any soybeans, any row crop. But it'll just be good to share the information just in case some farmers out there have some questions, kind of go from there. Another big thing is actually happening out there in agriculture right now that I don't think is going to affect the cattle farmer like myself or cattle producer like myself. However, it could affect what you have at the grocery store. And we will do some more research next week, but we have a major a JBS packer, meat packer out in Colorado. It looks like it's about to go on strike, and we'll do the homework for you for next week to see where does that meat go into the United States, what grocery stores or what part of the United States. So with that, hey team, play the video and let's talk about it on the back end.
I'm Clinton Griffiths with today's Ag Day Minute. Workers at one of the largest beef packing plants in the world are poised to go on strike. Now, it's reported 99% of union workers at the JBS plant in Greeley, Colorado have voted to strike. The workers alleged illegal conduct inside the plant and at the bargaining table. If the walkout happens, it would be the first in the plant's history. JBS saying in a statement that the company has negotiated in good faith, including offering meaningful wage increases along with a pension plan. Now, the union represents 3,800 workers at that plant. Contract negotiations have been going on for 8 months.
Well, I'm glad to hear that they're talking. Hopefully, they don't have to go to the point of actually having a strike. But if they do, it could have some great effect, and we will follow that particular process and report that to you next week. Because if they end up going to strike and it slows down the meat process that actually makes it into the grocery store, it could have some effect on some of our viewers that follow the show. But I was happy to hear that the union and JBS is actually sitting down and talking. And as you heard, they're actually upping their pay and making sure they have a pension or something. So when they finally stop working, they got something to pull off of in their as they get a little bit older in life. So that's some news that we got to continue to watch, because even though it doesn't affect our farmers on the front end, it will have great effect on all of us when we actually go to the grocery store to get some ground beef or steak or whatever we're trying to get. I know in the very beginning, I skipped one thing. I got so excited to talk about cows and stuff that I skipped one thing. Is it a way, Shelly, that I can go back to the stool? Because I want to explain see if we have some new people that's watching our show, what's the basis of our show? And thank you for that, Shelly. Is, on this show, we try to do, or we don't try to do, we do it. We focus on agriculture across the board. And when we focus on that agriculture, it's 3 or 4 things that we're constantly focusing on. One is livestock. Livestock is where I'm at. I have cattle, people have pigs, chickens, you name whatever, kind of self-explanatory. But that is a pillar that we continue to focus on. And just like I just talked about the potential strike, even though it's down the system or downstream from it, it's still affecting livestock, and that livestock could affect you and your family. And then we talk about row crops. Row crops is all those peanuts, soybeans, cotton, you name it, across the board. And that is the area that is very much hurting right now because of trade policies, and at the same time where we have our markets overseas, because a lot of that stuff falls into commodities. So that's an area that's really the Trump administration is trying to work out and get some solutions. But as of right now, the farmers are still waiting on some subsidies that we talked about, or we will be talking about, to try to get them to the next planting season. And then over there, you can barely see it on this one, is forestry. And under forestry, obviously that's pine trees and oak trees, but we also put in that particular area anybody who has fruit trees or specialty crops, those type things. We actually have that also. That's where we cover all those areas. And if you go back and look at some of our shows, we have had people come on the show that actually talk specifically about forestry, but also have the specialty crops like fruit trees and those kind of things. And we will get some more of them on the show, because right now you should be pruning your trees and those things, getting ready for the spring. And then at the top, you see at the top, it says passing the farm bill, because right now the farm bill is still based at 2018 prices. That means when you are receiving your payment, like I mentioned earlier in the show, for disaster relief or whatever, that payment's coming in at the 2018 price versus the prices that we pay in high inputs in 2026. So it's good to get it, but when you get it, you find out in a hurry that you're still short, and it's hard for you to make yourself whole. And then behind the scenes there, I don't really see it on this particular stool, is the USDA. The USDA is the umbrella that handles all of this for us. And the 2 offices that I'm normally in touch with in the USDA is NRCS. They help me on the farm and those kind of things. And then FSA, those guys also help when it comes to payments, or if you want to get a low interest loan to make some improvements on your farm or build a house or whatever you want to do in agriculture, they both there. Both are great organizations. What I will say is get to know your local agents. Go there, have a cup of coffee with them. Make sure you talk through your goals on your farm and get your farm registered so that you can reap some of the benefits of how do you improve your farm to be able to function in the future. So I just want to step back a little bit. Make sure you understand that is the theme of our show, to ensure that when we're going through all these things, we're always thinking about how does it fit into the stool, and based on that, how does it affect our farmers? How does it affect our families? And then how does it affect you as the end user, regardless you're a farmer or not? So with that, I think Shelly, give me a thumbs up. Did we already talk about the Farm Bridge payment yet? Okay, Shelly said no. Thanks, Shelly. You know, when you're in a hotel room and you're worried that the internet's going to go out, it is hard to keep up with everything that's going on. That's the reality. I'm basically saying to y'all guys, please, hotel internet, don't go out. Let's make it through the show. So with that, you know, I kind of mentioned it, but we're still waiting on a bridge payment. But before I go into too much detail, play the video. Shelly and I talk about it on the back end.
All the time, food security is national security. But with input costs at record highs and commodity prices sliding, that's become a much tougher job for America's farmers. As Damon Jones reports, that's why lawmakers passed the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program. Its purpose to help offset some of the losses producers faced in 2025.
While Georgia farmers have long struggled with high costs and low prices for their crops, 2025 brought record losses. It's why the recently approved Farmer Bridge Assistance Program is sorely needed in order to help producers stay afloat in the short term.
It's a holdover until we can get some more meaningful things in place. So whether that's higher commodity prices or lower inputs or more favorable trade deals, this is just what the administration could do immediately. It'll be a one-time payment. All the payment rates are calculated based off the commodity prices versus cost of production.
Two of the crops that will benefit the most are two of the state's largest, which both saw a negative per acre profit last year.
Those that were really struggling last year and the year before and the year before that and the year before that with the cotton crop are gonna look to shore up. And those that struggled almost as much as cotton last year with peanuts, they should be looking at a decent enough holdover until we get to a more favorable market condition.
Over the past decade, the number of farms in the U.S. has fallen by nearly 10%, a trend that would only be accelerated without this kind of assistance.
It's absolutely vital. Without it, I think you'd see a lot of people with last year being their last year farming. With this, I think it kind of helps farmers pay outstanding debts. This is really not going to the farmers. It's going to go in their pocket and out of their pocket the next day or same day, just to go ahead and pay outstanding bills and shore up existing debts.
And now the $12 billion question is, when can farmers expect to receive these payments?
Right now, rumor is February. I know that they still need to do some work on the specialty crop side. But for the covered commodities, those that have already had payment rates listed, the mechanism for that is pretty simple. You know, it's just whatever your payment rate is times your planted crops. So they should be able to get a check out relatively soon.
While that might seem like a large number, it's only a fraction of the financial losses suffered by the agricultural industry last year.
There's been a good discussion about trying to bring in another bridge type payment or bridge adjacent payment. It was one of the things that we made concerns about and listed and made sure that our lawmakers knew. You know, $12 billion is great. It is very appreciated. Without it, we'd be $12 billion further from where we need to be. It just did not go far enough for shoring it up.
Reporting from Macon.
You hear it said.
Is my mic on? Okay. Hey, okay, guys, as you can see there, the FBA is still coming. Probably the best way I can say it. I believe it's going to end up hitting at the end of February. Today, when I'm talking with some of the people from the USDA, I will actually ask that question. Maybe they'll tell me or not. And if they do, I'll come back and report next week. I thought something that was significant in there that everybody needs to understand, that when this money goes to the farmer, for all practical purposes, the day that it hits he or her account, it's actually taken right back out and it goes to any place that he or the spouse owes in their bills. So the farmer is not going to get rich. It's not going to be able to buy a new truck or a new tractor. It's actually just covering the bills from last year or even the bills from the year before that, just to make them whole enough so they can actually get another operating loan so they can plant the next year. But I'm still very concerned that we are going to lose some of our farmers. And as we lose that generation, that land goes up for sale. And the question is, does other farmers buy it, or does some kind of developer buys it and start planting houses? So we need to keep our eyes on this very close. Hopefully the money gets here soon. And like I said, I'll follow up and just make sure what's actually happening, come back and report to you next week. You know, where I live here in Northwest Georgia, I know people watches this all over the country, but where I live here in Northwest Georgia, we run right up to Chattanooga, Tennessee. So a lot of times what actually happening up in Tennessee, we are seeing the same effects in Northwest Georgia and potentially all the way through Georgia. And right now, just like in Tennessee, Georgia, throughout the country, farmers are hurting right now. The input costs are very high, and because that is the case, it is very hard right now for you to actually make a profit in farming unless you got some kind of niche market and got it figured out. So with that, let's see what's happening up in Tennessee, and I'll come back and talk on the back end.
Of everything has accelerated, and it costs more today than it did to farm just 5 years ago. And I think that's what's really affecting most farmers overall.
These cornfields in Marion County and the hurdles farmers who work them across the state face took center stage at the state capitol Wednesday. Tennessee's Agriculture Commissioner Andy Holt and his team said Tennessee farmers lost almost $300 million on 4 major crops.
If we look at the cumulative losses for these 4 crops, again, corn, soy, wheat, and cotton, what we see is that we had $192 million worth of loss in Tennessee alone on only 4 crops in 2025.
But what do those numbers mean to farmers in Tennessee who rely on corn and wheat crops in Marion County?
It takes a lot of money to farm. You have to have a good lender, and you have to have a good marketing plan to survive in this modern agriculture.
James Haskew says for 40 years he's been a farmer in Marion County, raising countless amounts of food crops, from corn to soybeans. He tells me it only gets harder to keep up with the changing industry as time goes on.
And it's difficult with today's economy to operate a business and afford labor and replacement cost with a 10 to 15% margin. No business in today's economy can sustain operating on a 10% margin. And that's kind of where we are.
In Marion County, Ray Collado, News Channel 9.
Yeah, that is something that we're hearing across the board. And the piece that concerns me is I don't see where things are getting better right now. We're still trying to work through some things. I've already mentioned that DC's trying to work through some things, but I'm also concerned that how do we get younger farmers into agriculture, because the ability to get into farming, the cost is so high. And then if you're working on a 10% margin, you got to have it spot on. And I guess that's why farmers work 7 days a week, because just in order to make ends meet, you got to be spot on. And one key thing that I know as a farmer, we do not control the weather, and we do not control input costs. And right now, I think we got a better chance of controlling the weather than we can control input costs. So I'll leave it right there. You know, we have the biggest thing in our row crop area people are talking about right now is soybeans. We've been talking for weeks that China has bought all the soybeans that they were going to buy this year. I don't know, don't remember that particular number. I said it a million times, but at the end of the day, still, even though they bought that, it was not enough to make all of our farmers whole. So that means there's still some farmers out there that are struggling, trying to see where they're going to sell their crops or what's going to actually happen. In addition to that, We are hearing a rumor. We're hearing a rumor that China's going to be buying some things from us next year and the year before, the year after. But we before I get out in front and just say it, I want to see it because unless we get our trade agreements in place and understand how tariffs are going to play in it or not going to play in it and get some consistencies, it's going to be very hard for our row crop and even me as a cattle farmer to be able to make ends meet, because when you have all this volatility in the system, that's when things can get a little sideways. So let's play the clip that just came out yesterday from CBS, and I'll talk about it on the back end where we think we are with soybeans in China.
Is boasting about a deal that he says he just struck with China to purchase millions of tons of soybeans imminently. It's an industry, by the way, that's been hit hard, particularly by President Trump's tariffs. And our next guest has heard the stories from American farmers firsthand. CBS News national correspondent Lana Zak is, by the way, the only national network correspondent based in Iowa, here in New York. Go Hawks. So love to have you here to chat more about this. Listen, President Trump was there just last week, I believe. What did he have to say about this deal?
Well, he spoke about ethanol. He spoke about the economy. He tried to downplay the idea that affordability is something that people should be caring about. And Iowans have supported President Trump by a vast margin. For the first time, though, his public approval ratings are underwater. And it's because the reaction to his policies have been so mixed. People in the Hawkeye State, they want the economy to be better. And on that, farmers have seen such problems, especially, as you know, I've been reporting about this, the soybean market completely on hold this summer. I spoke with a farmer this morning who said, yes, they are buying more soy. That is happening now. But look at the prices. Right? It's not just about selling your product. It's also about the prices that you fetch. So right now, a bushel is getting about $10.50 for a farmer. Back in 2022, they got almost $16 for that same bushel.
Wow.
So there is a significant problem, even though in some ways that crisis of China not buying soy is over. There is still a very real problem for America's farmers.
So people have been telling you for months that this issue would spread beyond soybean farmers. What kind of fallout have you seen, and what are they telling you?
Well, it certainly has a ripple effect. I want to play some sound from the Heartland.
Okay.
When farmers' income is tight, they spend less money on machinery, right? And so then the machinery manufacturers in the state, they pull back on production and perhaps have to furlough folks. So there are these ripple effects that start at the farm gate.
The long-term solution is less about a stopgap payment to help out in a time of need and more about just ongoing trade.
So those problems are continuing, and they do have that ripple effect throughout the country. It is not merely that the farmers are suffering, but we saw that barge operators, they weren't moving the product. We saw that John Deere had some major layoffs, as well as other tractor manufacturers. And then local businesses like restaurants suffer because people don't have the disposable income. And so in all these ways, rural economies are being very hard hit, but so are other economies that sort of spread out from there and the overall GDP of the country.
All right. Lana Zak, thank you so much.
It's good to have you in New York,
It's great to
and you
be
did
here.
some really incredible reporting in Minneapolis. Yeah, it was really
Yeah, you know, that was an awesome report. And that report just came out yesterday. And when I say it was an awesome report, it's not a good news report, but at least let us know where we're at. You know, right now, soybeans for this year, China purchases roughly about 20 million tons or whatever it is. Next year's growing season, they're saying they're going to purchase 25 million tons. But that being said, is this, just like she said in the clip, if you selling that many, but you actually selling it for a lower price, you're not coming out ahead. So we still got a lot of work to do. I mentioned last night here in Somerville about small town America, and here in Northwest Georgia, the number one industry, and Georgia, the number one industry is agriculture. And if agriculture collapses, the entire system collapses. And what she talked about there is the second and third order effect that if money's not coming in to the farmers, small town America could actually collapse in on itself, because now the farmers not putting money back in the community. Our schools are not getting the property tax that they need to be having, and all those things. So this thing that we're doing with agriculture affects everybody, not just people out in the rural community, but all the way back to our cities, because if it collapses, we're all going to feel it. So we need to get our hands around it. We got to get this trade problem figured out, because at the end of the day, farmers are working extremely hard for trying to make a profit. But if you all of a sudden what you're producing, you actually getting less than half of what you got the year prior to that, then that doesn't make any sense. With that being said, you know, I'm not the Debbie Downer, but I'm a realist. Farmers are under extreme pressure right now to not be the last person to own the farm of the generation after generation after generation, or you're the one person in the family that's holding on to the farm, and everybody else wants to sell it and go make a bunch of money for half a day and then lose it like they won the lottery or something. With that being said, farmers are under extreme pressure. Believe it or not, farmers are actually committing suicide at a faster rate than veterans. And I think y'all guys know that I'm a veteran. But one of the things I always want to do on this particular show, if you don't pay attention to anything else on this show, or if you want to skip through everything else I talk about, please, if you're a farmer and you're stressed out, or if you're a farmer spouse or friend or family member and you see that individual stressing out, please call 988 and get them some help, because the key thing is, it may look extremely bad today, but just make it through the day. The sun will come up tomorrow and it'll probably look a lot better. So let's make sure we keep our farmers around. The reason why we do this show is because we want to condense everything that's actually happening in agriculture in a week down to about a 30-minute to 45-minute little piece that you can then, at your convenience, if you want to watch it live, or you can watch it on YouTube or wherever you want to watch it, and keep yourself up to speed of currently what's going on. But I think the most important part of the show is that piece where I talk about the mental health, because I know a lot of farmers up here in Northwest Georgia, and really throughout the country, that when I talk to them on the phone, they are very stressed about what's going on. It doesn't make any difference what piece of that stew that you own, because I mentioned earlier in some other shows, in the forestry community where I'm originally from, Blakely, Georgia, our paper mill has shut down. And that was the lifeblood of my little town there in Blakely, Georgia. And you can already see the effects of it just by the number of cars driving around town. You can't afford gas. So these are real issues that we got to get in front of and kind of go from there. Hey, we have made it. I don't know how we made it. I don't want to jinx myself, but we are doing this show from the hotel room on our phones, hotspots, and it works. So I want to give a shout out to hotspots and stuff, because it worked. And guess what else? My coffee from the gas station was outstanding. Matter of fact, when I leave this hotel room, I'm going back across the street again and get another cup. And guess what? That means the cup is upside down, waste a little bit on the table. But guess what? That's the end of the show. See you next week.